Hello and welcome into the Cubs on Deck podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by another player guest. Today I'm joined by the Cubs on Deck minor league starting pitcher of the year, the MLB Pipeline Cubs pitcher of the year. As of the time of the recording this, there has not been an announcement as far as Cubs, their own Cubs minor league pitcher of the year, but I'm sure it'll be this guy, Brandon Birdsell. I'm joined with you today. How's it going, man?
Good. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. I'm excited to have you on. Excited to chop it up a little bit, talk baseball throughout this episode. But I think we're going to start off here, like I typically do with most of the players that I have on the show. We're going to start with some more lighthearted stuff, not digging into the pitch mixes and stuff like that right out the gate. We'll get into that. But first, I'll start it off with you're a Texas guy. What other sports are you getting into? Are you a Cowboys fan? Are you a Texans fan? Are you following the NBA? What's your go-to other sports outside of baseball?
Well, I hate to be that guy, but I'm not really a big football fan.
No?
Not really a big basketball fan. I do like golf. I love
Okay.
watching golf and playing. So, and we got Scotty Scheffler from Texas, so representing Texas. But I mean, honestly, other than that, we're living with my in-laws right now, and my father-in-law always has a football game on, so I'll watch here and there. But
Yeah.
yeah, for the most, I'm not that interested.
You hitting the golf course with the guys during the season?
Yeah, we try to, on our off days, and when we got to AAA, you have a little bit more opportunity and leeway to go hit the course. And so I remember in Toledo, there was about 10 of us that took our clubs, and we went and hit the course on that Monday, and it was a good time.
Where do you fall in the competitiveness? How good are you compared to your teammates?
I would say I'm more towards the top.
Okay.
I'm not the greatest golfer, but yeah, whenever we go play, I'd say I'm usually one of the guys picking teams.
Who's the guy to beat then?
Um, I mean, one of the guys. I mean, we've gone and played golf 100 times. Connor Nolan. He,
Okay.
he's pretty good. He can hit it well, man. He's just try and keep that putter out of his hands. He can't putt it straight for anything. But no, he can hit the ball pretty good.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, man. I'm curious about. We'll talk plenty about your pitching. I'm curious on how you can handle the bat. If you were given a full season worth of at bats, how many tanks you hitting at the plate?
I don't even know. Once guys started throwing 90 and having a good curveball, I didn't see it that well. So I'm actually really glad I don't have to hit.
Yeah, I had Riley Martin on the show recently, and he was like I don't know if I could do anything at the plate at all. So he said he hadn't touched a bat since high school.
Yeah, yeah, same here. And I'd be stepping in the bucket, stepping out, just trying to make contact. And I don't know how many knocks I'd get.
All right, man. Who's the biggest trash talker on the team of your teammates? Who's talking the most trash out there?
Easily, I'd say easily it was Trey Shupak this year.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's not even another guy that comes to mind.
With opponents or just like in the clubhouse?
All
Both.
day, every day. It was a lot of lighthearted stuff, but
Yeah,
in the clubhouse, playing catch, um, towards the other team, I mean, it did not matter. It was in his nature.
I love it. I love it. I was watching some playoff baseball this past week, and I noticed something. I was curious to get. I was like, I got a good opportunity to ask you while you're on the podcast. There was a pitcher that gave up a warning track flyout, right? And as soon as the ball went in the air on this warning track flyout, he points to the air like it's an infield pop up.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever been found guilty of pointing in the air for a warning track flyout as if it were a pop out?
I can honestly say no. I don't point in the air whenever
Okay,
there's
yeah,
a fly ball. I think they see the ball pretty well out there, so they're not looking at me waiting for my confirmation that it was a pop fly. So
that's fair.
I'm glad I don't, because I'd probably look stupid on some of the homers I've given up.
I mean, what was your? I mean, you had a big year this year, obviously. Whether it was you personally or with a team, what was your favorite moment from this 2024 campaign?
Favorite moment? I was thinking about this the other day. Um, I don't know. The last game was pretty cool. Um, Honestly, I'd say probably just the whole experience with having my kid.
Yeah.
So me and my wife, she was 39 weeks pregnant, and we were in that 12-game stretch of playing for 12 days straight. And I pitched that Monday against Chattanooga in Tennessee, and she was supposed to have an induction that night, but it didn't go through, and she wasn't able to get the induction. So, um, I threw against Chattanooga, pitched really well, and my mother-in-law was there too because my wife was going to pop at some point, and we get in the car and we're going home, and our pitching coach Vern calls me. He's like, "Hey, we need you to come back." So right away, I'm like, "Okay, this is probably what's happening. I'm probably getting promoted. If I'm getting promoted, they're a little more high strung than I am. A little bit more anxious than I am." I said,
Yeah.
"What are we gonna do if this is happening?" And then I let them know, and sure enough, went up there. They told me. We came back home, started packing up the apartment immediately, and they were very graceful throughout that period. They gave me plenty of time to get to Iowa and whatnot. And I wasn't even with the team for that week, but they were in Chattanooga, and I had to drive up to Chattanooga, throw a bullpen. And I'm sorry, I'm skipping the main part. So that after that night, she ends up going into labor the very next day,
Yeah.
and I'm out on the field, doing my post start routine. I'm doing sprints, and our trainer comes running out. And he's like, "Hey, your wife's going into labor," and I was just in shock. I was like, "There's no way this is happening."
Yeah.
Now I'm coming off, and everyone's cheering for me and clapping for me. It was a good moment, and yeah, she ends up giving birth that night or early the next morning. I'm up at the hospital for like 3 days. I'm driving up to the ballpark to throw, and then they were in Chattanooga for the 3 games. Went up there and threw a bull or stayed the night, threw a bullpen, drove back, packed up the car, drove 12 hours to Iowa. Next day, in the team hotel in Iowa, there's a parking garage, but you have to walk through the entire hotel.
Okay.
So I did about 20 loads on the push cart, getting our stuff to the hotel room. I get it all done. The next day, I get on the flight with the team to go to Nashville, and her parents drive her and my son out to Nashville from Knoxville, and we stay there that week, and then we end up flying back to Knoxville or to Iowa. We get everything settled in the hotel, and then the next day, like, "Hey, we got you guys an apartment." So then we
Yeah.
had to pack everything back up, moved into the apartment. But yeah, his birth was awesome. It was a crazy experience too.
Yeah. I'd say it's a pretty crazy. I didn't realize that you went up to Iowa, but then you guys were playing in Nashville, which is, I mean,
Yeah,
you're just across the state, essentially.
right.
Just
And
basically.
I had to drive to Iowa because we couldn't drive back to Knoxville with all of our, or, and have all of our stuff. We had no room, so
Yeah.
I had to just sacrifice and drive it all up to Iowa, and then hop on the plane the next day.
Dude, that's I don't know. I can't imagine there's a whole lot of guys that have gone through a mid-season promotion in the middle of having their first kid. So I think you're pretty unique in that circumstance.
You know what? At the beginning of the year, we talked about, the crazy things that could happen, and I don't know. It was a crazy experience, but it was, he's gonna have a story one day.
Yeah, I was gonna say that wasn't really on your bingo card of
No,
things that were gonna happen this
no,
this season.
definitely not.
Man, that yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was gonna ask you about the story, but that's just crazy. You're just on the go for I mean, we talked before we started recording about your sleep schedule right now. You couldn't have gotten a whole lot of sleep during that week and a half or so.
Nah, I was having to take a nap, before my pregame routine and stuff, just trying to get a little 15-20 minute cat nap, trying to get a little bit of more energy. But yeah, no, it was good.
That's wild. That's wild. So I know that you and Connor Nolan have been teammates for kind of your entire pro careers up to this point. You kind of bounce around all the way up to AAA together. I heard that there was some sort of something went on as far as you getting one more inning, one more out than him this season.
Let me actually get the ball for you.
Okay, yeah, I want to see what you got here.
So, funny thing about that is we it's probably it's like our second to last homestand. And he comes up to me and he's like, "I'm winning, right?" I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm beating you in innings. I'm like, okay, well, our last homestand, I have two more outings, or I got the Tuesday, Sunday, and so
Yeah.
and then I end up going a total of like 5 innings that week. And so I was like, "You're lucky. I'm just making it interesting for you." He comes up and he says, "We're in an inning race." I'm like, "Okay, well,
You
this is
didn't
the
know what's
first time you're
happening.
letting me." No, he's like, "This is the first time he's let me know about it." And so I had a bad week. I pitched a total of like 5 innings. He had 4 and 2/3. I think he had one more out than I did going into Rochester, or two more
Okay.
outs, and I was 5 and 2/3 to beat him. So whenever I got I got the second out in the sixth inning,
Yeah.
I threw the ball out. And everyone was confused. They didn't know why, but I threw the ball out because I was going to do this, and I actually got it. So I bought a case for it. I've got it in
No
this
way.
little case, and on it says 2024 innings race that Connor Nolan made up with 2 weeks left in the season. And then I got mine. I went 135 and 2/3, and he went 134. And then
Yep.
I signed it right here, and then I made him sign it right here.
That's incredible, dude. That's awesome. Yeah, you didn't know about. He didn't even tell you about this competition that was happening until 2 weeks
No,
prior, and you're like, oh well, I guess it's on now.
yeah, I'm like, well, if and then, I didn't even think about this till right in the middle of the game, but I was like, you know what? If I do it, I am going to get that ball,
Yeah.
because I don't know, it's a funny little story, funny little things that you guys do throughout the season,
Oh yeah.
long season to, make things fun and interesting. So
Did he know why you were throwing out the ball when you got it?
I think he did. I think he did, because he was watching. He was watching too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's like, you know what? I hope you go 5 innings. I hope you go a really good 5 innings. Maybe have a couple long innings.
Yeah.
But I hope you don't go any more than that.
He's like, this pitch count is too low right now.
Yeah, I'm like, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And sure enough, I did awful my last homestand. So I'm like, you're lucky. I made it interesting for us going into the last week. Pretty much, it was whoever had the better week that last week. So
That's incredible. I love that. No, I think that's pretty cool. I'm all right. So as far as I'm gonna get into your pitch repertoire here pretty soon, but I'm curious if you could take one pitch from one of your teammates and incorporate it into your arsenal. Whose pitch would you incorporate?
I would love a changeup that anyone throws somewhat well. I've been working on that changeup for 10 years of my life, and
Yeah.
it's still giving me trouble. Um, I'm trying to think of who has a really good
I
changeup.
Riley Martin said Palencia Splitty.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty. Like
Yeah.
he's thrown some with like 200 RPM, and
Yeah.
it's at like 92. That
Yeah.
has pretty good drop on it. And it's unreal.
Yeah. There's some good change ups and some good splitters in the organization. So you could cop one of those for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. I'm curious about your pitch mix because what what do you tell people that you throw? Because I think that like when watching you, it's one of the more entertaining things this year for me was watching your pitch mix because if you're asking me, it's like, all right, it looks like there's a four seam, looks like there's a cut ride fastball, looks like there's a cutter, a slider, a slutter, a curve, all these different things. When someone says like, what pitches do you throw? Like, what pitches do you throw?
I tell them I throw a four seam, like cuts.
Yeah,
I throw a cutter, and I throw a slider that has a downer. It's like curveball profile,
yeah,
but I have to throw it like a slider because like my fingers, like I can't do this very well,
mm-hmm.
and so like I on my slider I just do this.
Okay, yeah,
What's there
okay.
balloons on my thing? I don't know.
But
I
yeah,
do
so
I do
so
this
you're
with
just
my
going straight
fingers.
down on it. Is that like that like gyro slider, or is that something different?
No, the gyro slider is like kind of like 0-0, and it kind of like, or a little bit, but it's like that term, the death ball that people were talking
Yeah.
about all
Yep.
during spring training. It's like it's trying to copy Ben Brown's
Yep.
curveball movement. Like he kind of just does this and
Yep.
kind of pulls down on it, and that's what I
Mm-hmm.
do with my slider. Like I had the bullet slider early in the year, and I wasn't getting a ton of swing and miss on it. So it was probably about maybe when I faced Biloxi. I started doing this a little bit, getting on top of it and getting a little more depth and getting swing and miss. And then when I got to triple, and I throw a changeup, or I attempt to throw a changeup. It's like a cut. It's like a cut kick change, I guess you could
Okay.
call it. Like pretty much like my fingers like this, and I'm throwing it like a heater, just with
Yeah.
different fingers. And bullpens, it's been really, really good. It's just about transferring that into the game.
Mm-hmm.
But then I throw the cutter that does like 5 or 6 different things depending on where I'm throwing it. Like when I'm throwing it down in the zone, I can get a little bit more on top of it, so it looks more like a true slider. And then when
Yep.
it's up in the zone, I stay behind it a little bit and get around it a little bit, and it kind of just sits up there. So it kind of has a mind of its own, which is actually a good thing because then it's almost like that pitch gives me 3 pitches.
Yeah.
You got to worry about down in the zone, up in the zone, if I backdoor it, so yeah.
And that cutter was something you picked up mid-season, right?
Yeah, my first game against it was against Omaha, and
Okay.
when I was in AAA.
Where'd that come from? Who was that? Was that you going to the coaching staff, or was that the other way around? Like, how did that come to be?
It was me. I was pretty much the fastball and the downer slider, and it was like I had 2 pitches, and I needed something harder, some
Mhm.
like a hard slider, and um, it was Dan Straley at the time. He was throwing. I actually used his cutter grip, and
Yeah.
or I went up to our pitching coach. I was like, "Hey, can I throw a cutter?" He's like, "You can do whatever you want." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I want to throw a cutter." And he showed me the grip, and I got it. I threw it just like a heater, and it felt really good. Threw it in the bullpen, felt really good. And then I went in the game, and I threw it like twice in the first AB, and you could just tell that was not on the scouting report. They're like going back to the dugout confused, and like I get it. I don't know. It was easy for me because I throw a cut fastball like I usually do, just with a different grip, and it works. It plays.
Well, I mean, you could surprise people. You could surprise opposing hitters because it's not on the scouting report in that first outing. But it's kind of like, as you said, it kind of has a mind of its own. So it's like 3 or 4 different versions of itself, and so you can't really just say, "Oh, like there's a cutter on the scouting report." It's like a cutter that is 4 different things. Like it's 4 separate types of pitches on the scouting report, right?
Right. And then my fastball, sometimes has a mind of its own too. It's sometimes it's cut right, sometimes it's just straight cut.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm trying to throw it to my glove side and at like 96, and it's just I don't know. All my pitches kind of move in the same direction, but the cutter definitely gives me more room to play with. So
Yeah, no, I'm always curious. I ask Riley Martin the same thing. I'm curious your perspective on it in terms of like modeling like your pitches based off of like big league comps, right? Where you're like, oh, for example, like Justin Steele, like lefty, obviously you're a righty, but like Justin Steele throws his like cut right fastball. Is that something where you're like, oh, I want to try to make the shape of this pitch look like a current big leaguers?
honestly, what really inspired me was watching the Twins organization whenever we faced St. Paul.
Hmm.
They loved cutters, and it
Yeah,
was like Zebby Matthews and Louis Varlin. And they man, their heaters were playing so much better. They were throwing their cutter probably 45 to 50% of the time, and then they just kind of surprise them with the heater at the top of the zone at 96 and just blow it by guys. I was like, that's pretty cool. I want to try to do that. And then that's kind of what led to the cutter. As far as trying to model after a big leaguer, something I really learned this year was understanding how my body works.
hmm,
Even if it looks weird, even if it looks funky, I don't really care as long as it gets guys out. And so, really understanding how my body moves and sticking to that and trying to find pitches to where I don't have to like change my wrists or I'm throwing everything like the exact same. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I know that so you got a lot of pitch. I mean, between the cut on the fastball, the cutter, the slider, you got a lot of pitches that are going away. Like they're going glove side, right? They're going away from right-handed hitters. Is there any kind of process for you? You talked about the changeup a little bit and kind of developing that a little bit. Is that like your next step? Is that changeup so you can throw that to lefties? Like how do you are you working on anything going arm side as opposed to everything going glove side?
Yeah, the changeup, it's not cooperating with me very well right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
But one thing that I could do to kind of do exactly that was really learning when to throw into hitters,
Mhm.
because everything's going away. Guys tend to, get out over the plate and they kind of look for something away. And then if you can bust them in with a heater, you got to make them respect in. So now you can keep doing what you've been doing.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I really learned this year was, I mean, I've always thrown into hitters, but like knowing when I need to throw to a hitter in pretty much.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not wearing a scouting hat here. Like that's not my expertise, but like watching you this year, it just felt like the fastball up and in to right-handed hitters seemed to work really really well. And you pair that well with a slider diving away from them, like that's a pretty good combo right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, one, you're changing eye levels, and instinctively, when you're throwing, if you're hitting and you got a fastball that's at 94 coming up and in on your hands, that's not going to be very comfortable, and it's
Yeah,
going to look more like 96 than 94. Versus like when you throw it away, it tends to look the velo, right?
yeah.
And so it's kind of like a human instinct. Like when you throw in on a hitter, it's like, oh, I got to get out the way, and then it just looks harder, and yeah,
Yeah, that's fair. I want to take it backwards here a little bit because one of my favorite questions I like to ask players when I get them on is about their draft day story. Because I've heard, like I mentioned before, I've heard everything from like I was out on the golf course when I got a call versus I was expecting to be drafted by somebody else versus just all these different like weird and crazy stories about draft day. You obviously were drafted by the Cubs your last year that you were drafted,
yeah,
but you were also drafted twice before that, right?
yeah.
So how was that? I guess how was the process of being drafted by the Cubs in your last draft? How did that compare to other versions of being drafted?
Um, Without going into too much detail, my junior year when I got drafted, it was a lot of miscommunication between me and my past agents,
Mhm.
and I didn't really want to. I wanted to go back to school, and I ended
Yeah,
up getting drafted. And um, long story short, I ended up going back to school because that's what I wanted to do. In high school, it was kind of like a hey, that was when it was 40 rounds, and so
yeah,
I was drafting like the 39th. It wasn't like a serious offer. It was just kind of, hey, you're a Houston guy. We know, we've been watching you and that sort of
mhm,
deal. And they knew I was going to say no.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but with the Cubs, I had a really good year my senior year. I was 94, 96, touching 98, 99 pretty regularly. I had more of a bullet slider back then. Um, and it was pretty much what I was told, like, hey, anytime on day two, probably rounds 3 through 6, whatever. And so we were at my grandmother and grandfather-in-law's house in Lubbock. They lived in Lubbock, and we just had all both of our families, and we were in the back watching. And I'm an emotional guy. My family's very emotional, so when I got picked, I started crying. Everyone started crying. Um, because it's like it's something that you work for your whole
yeah.
life, and so I'm an emotional guy. Like my son was born, I cried. If I make my debut, I can promise you I'll cry. When I get told that, I'm going to cry. And yeah, it was just a good moment. We got the news, hugged everybody, and then I picked up my now wife, and I jumped in the pool with her. So
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's always fun. I mean, I know I mean, it's something you've built your entire life to experience that moment. So
yeah,
I'm curious. I don't know how I've made it 25 or so minutes into this episode without asking you about your arm action yet.
yeah.
The way in which you throw. I mean, like that's something that I probably should have I buried the lead here a little bit. But um, you want to tell me a little bit about the story about like how that came to be? Have you always been a super short arm action guy? Is it something you transitioned in college at that point? Like what's the story behind you throwing Lucas Giolito style from your ear?
It's just natural. It's
Yeah,
what feels good, and it's funny that guy. There was a time when guys were switching to short arm, and
yeah,
like I've always been told to get longer,
yeah, yeah.
get more length, and then everybody was trying to get shorter,
Hmm.
and but it's it's evolved in its own way naturally. I haven't tried to manipulate it or anything.
Yeah.
I would say I liked my arm action a little bit better my senior year. You know, it was still short, but like I didn't have like this little cupping motion.
Yep.
Um, but like I said earlier, if it looks funny, if it looks funky, I don't. It don't matter to me as long as
Yeah.
I'm getting guys out. So
Were you a catcher or an infielder like growing up? Like where
yeah,
like okay.
I
Yeah.
caught I caught from whenever I was 10 until I had Tommy John surgery
Yep.
my junior year of high school, and so
Yep.
I love catching. I love throwing guys out. And then other than that, I played third base. So
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what my arm action was like before high school. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's something my dad would have to tell me. But could it be from catching? Absolutely. But I don't know. It's just what feels good to
I
me.
was gonna say it looks a little catcher like, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
it looks like you're trying to be quick and throw a runner out at second base is what it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could definitely be the reason why.
You you spent some time at San Jack Community College, and you worked with wasn't Woody Williams your pitching coach there? What
Yeah.
was that experience like?
It was great. He was awesome to work with, and there was a lot of it wasn't only like mechanical stuff, but it was between the ears. You know,
Mhm.
learning how to become a pitcher, learning how to think when you're on the mound, and that kind of got me started there because like I wasn't very good my freshman year of college when I was at Texas A&M, and he's the one who really kind of jump started my career, and I I actually was pitching pretty well right before COVID, and I had some calls during that shortened draft, and now it's just calls. I don't know if I was actually going to get picked, but I really wanted to go to school, so I told them, hey, I'm just going to go to school, and they're like, okay, we respect it. But yeah, no, Woody was great. We talked from time to time, and he's a really great mentor.
During your 1 year, right? You had 1 year at San Jack in
Yeah,
2020.
yeah,
Luke Little and Jack Neely were both there at the same time as you, right?
yeah. Luke was there. Jack was there. The guy who debuted and was with the Nats all year, Mitchell Parker, he was there. Um, I think that was it. But yeah,
Yeah.
we were all there at one point or another.
But wild that three now Cubs players we're all on that same
Yeah,
team. That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Me and Jack Neely were actually roommates
Okay.
at
Yeah.
when he was at San Jack.
How cool was it to see him coming to the over to the Cubs org this year?
That was cool, man. He came in and he fit in well, and pitched well. Made his
Yeah.
debut and stuff. So yeah, it was great. It was good for him.
Has he always had the stash?
I don't think so. I'm trying to remember. I think he had more of a like scruffy beard with the
Yeah.
stash, but I don't think he's always just been a stash.
Man, he's
I
kind of
think,
got the style of a reliever going, man. Like between the
yeah,
stash and he's wearing the like turtleneck with the chain. Like he's kind of got it figured out a little bit.
yeah,
All right, so I want to transition a little bit from some of like the pitch mix and your college days and stuff like that to I got a few of the numbers I'm looking at, right, and kind of how you go about attacking hitters. I know this year you had the fourth lowest walk percentage in all of minor league baseball with a minimum of 130 innings pitched this year.
wow,
Uh, which I went back and double checked that to make sure that was the case. And that's a pretty crazy stat. You want to talk a little bit about, I mean, you've always had low walk numbers, right? Like in your pro career, and
hmm
even at Texas Tech. You want to talk a little bit about like that control and how important that control and limiting the walks is, and then also how that compares to like command and being able to put pitches where you want them.
yeah. Well, first thing is, not being scared to attack hitters inside the zone. I think when you try and nibble too much, and you see it in some of my games where I may have walked two or three guys. It's like 1-0, 2-0, okay, 2-1, now 3-1, throw it in the zone 3-2, and then you try to throw an off speed pitch to get a strikeout, and it's ball four.
Hmm.
So I think as the year went on throughout my time at AAA, even 3-2 attacking guys in the zone with the heater, and like if you hit it out, you hit it out, but there's a good chance that the odds are in my favor. So. Um, I think also just hating letting guys get on for free. You
Yeah.
know, it's funny. Like between me and Connor, we both did really well with trying to limit those free passes, and um, there's just something about it. Something about letting a guy on for free, it just irks you. And then
Yeah.
if he scores, it makes you more mad. And so, but I think it's also, like I said earlier, just understanding your body, repeating your mechanics. Um, and that helps you throw more strikes. The command for me has just been more of a confidence thing.
Yeah.
As the more I've pitched, the more I've tried going in, going out. It's just stacked on top of each other, and I didn't really change anything to start throwing more strikes. I just tried to stay in the zone and attack hitters from there, go in and out, and try to throw pitches to make them swing out of pitches out of the zone and all sorts of things.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point where it's like it's kind of interesting because I feel like a lot of times we're talking about guys who limit walks because they're constantly in the zone, and sometimes it's like those pitches out of the zone, you just got to get more swings and misses on them. Like you got to
Yeah.
get guys chasing after those, and that's another way to kind of start limiting the walks in a completely different way.
Right. Yeah, like early in my time in AAA, my main out pitch was always the heater up,
Yeah,
get right above the zone. And when I first got there, guys were taking it straight out of the hand, like 0-2, 1-2. And so I had to start pitching down and away to get them respect down and away to open the top of the zone back up. So it's like you got to cover down and away, and you also got to cover up. So
yeah.
once I started doing that, I started getting more swing and misses on the heater up.
I feel like I'm taking a poll every player I talk to. What's the biggest jump? Like, what's the biggest? Is it from Double A to Triple A? Is it high A to Double A? Like, where's that biggest jump in pro ball?
I think it's double A to triple A. Each level has its own challenges, but in triple A, you can get a game can turn on you in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And it's really important to limit the damage. Being okay with giving up 1 run, even 2 runs. With guys bases loaded, no outs, 1 out, um, and doing it quick rather than having long ABs, make a mistake. Because triple A to me is the biggest level where they play off of momentum.
Hmm.
And so they start hitting well, and you see it in some of our starts. Like we played Indianapolis, I think maybe like my third start in AAA, and the whole week they destroyed us. Like it was hit after hit after hit after
Yeah,
hit, and they're
I
so
bet.
confident. And I don't know, we were just like, man, we don't know what to do.
That
But
was a rough series, man. That
yeah,
was a rough one. Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, it's for me it was definitely AAA because it kind of forced me to find another pitch to be able to stay at that level. And it was definitely the biggest learning. Yeah, learning how to try and read swings and how to throw to certain hitters. When to mix up your game plan versus when to stick with it. And yeah, so I say AAA.
I meant to ask you earlier about the curveball because you didn't you have a curveball early in the year and you ended
Yeah,
up dropping that.
yeah.
Is that something you want to bring back into the mix or no?
As of right now, no. It was getting hit. It was getting hit a lot, and I wasn't doing a great job of getting it down in the zone, so I didn't have great feel for it. Honestly, whenever it was good is whenever my mechanics felt in sync. I
Hmm.
could stay behind the baseball and let my hand get out front.
Hmm.
But it was doing more harm than good, so kind of just banged it and developed that kind of death ball slider type
Yeah.
thing.
What's your thoughts on the ABS strike zone in AAA?
I like it. It's
Yeah.
frustrating. It's frustrating sometimes, but I like the challenging. I
Yeah.
like the challenges. Even if it doesn't go in your favor, I think it would be a great thing to have in the big leagues.
Did they can the fully automatic before you got there?
Yeah,
Okay, so
it's,
you
it
you
was,
only experienced the challenge system.
yeah, it was only the challenge system.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's kinda nice having the challenge system where it's like, hey, like, there's still a human element, but, like,
Yep.
at the same time, like, you kinda gotta use the challenges wisely. Did you ever challenge yourself?
No.
You
Yeah,
didn't?
because sometimes when you think that it was a full ball in the zone, you go and look on the iPad and it was a full ball out, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm not as good at this as I
Yeah.
as I think I am.
Who
But
who's the best one at the challenges? Has there been a guy who's been
uh,
like, "I'm really good at this?"
I think Bally got a lot better towards the end
Really?
of the year. Early on, from what I heard, it was kind of hard. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, you're coming from Double A where the zones change so much, and you know, I could see why big league umpires come down to AAA and they
Yeah.
struggle because they have their zone, and it's like the challenge system is pretty much forcing you to change your zone
Yeah.
from what. And so like sometimes umpires might get a whirlwind whenever the guy challenges two and back to back, and they get them both right, and then he's like,
Yeah.
man, I don't know if I know the zone as well as I think I do.
I got to rethink what this entire strike zone is.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your uptick in strikeouts from 2023 to 2024. I mean, because you went from I don't know the stats, but I think it was like 8 strikeouts per nine to 10 strikeouts per nine over that span from 23 to 24. Is that was that just a situation where where your stuff just got significantly better? Like what made that uptick? Because you don't see that uptick in strikeouts that quickly year over year. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was throwing harder this year.
Yeah.
I had a better idea of, you know, throwing the heater, especially like up and away, up and in, down and away,
Hmm.
And so I think the year before that, it was kind of just, I wasn't thinking as much on the mound, which
Hmm.
sometimes can be a good thing, but also it's a great thing if you're thinking on the mound like situationally.
Yeah.
You're thinking pitch to pitch, and uh, yeah, I don't know. I can't pinpoint exactly one thing that helped lead to it. The cutter definitely helped with that. I
Yeah.
think when I had the cutter, then my strikeouts really dramatically ticked up. But yeah, just kind of a mix of a lot of things.
All right, man. What's to wrap this up a little bit? What's your off-season plans? Like what's the move this off-season? Are you working on anything in particular? Just getting better in general? Like what's the move for you this off-season?
Right now, I'm working on my handicap. Get my handicap a little lower.
That's fair. That hey,
But
that's what the month of October is for, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but no, seriously, like for me, it's um, one is my diet. Trying to have a good diet and probably lose maybe a percent or so of body fat, just see if I'm moving better.
Yeah.
And then other than that, just to change up. But I mean, it showed, this year like stuff can play. So trusting that going into next year, and hopefully going into it with a change up. So
I know that you mentioned that you're an emotional guy. I'm curious about when you think about potentially making your MLB debut next year. What goes through your mind when you're thinking about that?
just happiness,
Yeah.
just pure joy.
I mean, getting that Wrigley Field experience, it's different there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also just uh, keeping confidence.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes when you move up a level, you can kind of have that imposter syndrome where you're like, man, I don't know if I can pitch here. I don't know if I belong. But it's like, keeping that confidence to be like, nah, I'm here for a reason. So
Yeah. Yeah. I whenever I get a guy on or I'm talking to a player at all, I always got to ask him a teammate that should be getting more love, right? I come on the show during the season and we're talking about all the players throughout the entire system. We're locking into some of the best players in the organization and stuff like that. I know you're not listening to these shows, but in your mind, who's somebody that I should be talking about more? Who's a guy that deserves more love? That maybe a teammate of yours that you chat with in the clubhouse you really like, or you're watching MVP, or you're watching take ground balls, and you're like, holy cow, like this kid's good. Like what's who's a guy I should be talking about more?
um, honestly, I'd say, probably Connor Nolan. It's not easy at the level that we're at, and he goes in and day in and day out, and he's consistent as can be, and um, yeah, definitely he makes it look easy, definitely.
Dude, talk about a guy who saw an uptick in some stuff this past year. Like his stuff looked good. His stuff looked
Yeah,
really good this past year. It was great.
he's always thrown that curveball really well, and I think he
Yeah.
added like a bigger sweeper that's like on that 0 and 17 line, and
Yeah.
started throwing his changeup too. And I play catch with him sometimes, and man, his heater like sometimes it cuts, sometimes
Yeah.
it sinks, sometimes it just like zigzags towards you. And so it's funny, you're like he's only 88 to 89. Well, like he's throwing a fastball that's doing this at you. And
Yeah.
they're like, how can we not hit it? Well, I mean, his fastball's got three different shapes.
Yeah. That's kind of wild. That's cool. All right, man. I appreciate you coming on the show. It means a ton for you to come on and just chat ball. Really appreciate it and wishing you all the best in 2025, man.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you.
All right, everybody out there listening, really appreciate you tuning in and checking out the podcast. You can find us over on YouTube, over on the Northside Bound YouTube page. You can find us on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, all that good stuff wherever you find your podcast. Really appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll be back in your ears with another interview in 2 short weeks. Thanks, guys.
Yo.